Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. Story number 1, A Show of Force, written by a lone donut. Braxia held its breath, not literally. Very few planets actually breathe, but the population sat in momentary terror. Eyes watched the skies and waited. 4 standard months ago, diplomacy had broken down between the human nation of the Alliance and the Braxians. It had started honestly enough. Human raw material exports were destroying Braxian industries. They sought to have the Alliance slow its production and even limit the amount of Alliance-produced resources that could be traded across the Galactic Trade Commission. The rest of the human bloc had opposed this. The Rish's manufacturing sector relied heavily on the constant flow of Alliance materials, and the Nomads regularly sent their citizens to crew the Alliance mining and maintenance platforms. Slowing that industry would have negative impacts across all 3 exporting human nations. Even the Gaians, known for their peaceful and non-interference in galactic affairs, had joined their kin in protest. Of course, the Commission refused to get involved at first. A lot of other members relied on human exports. Alliance drone ships moved a lot of goods across known space. But as the Braxians rattled their cage and threatened to begin blockading routes through their space in protest, these sections of known space that were heavily used for trade increased pressure. Threats of sanctions bounced around, and formally the Alliance discontinued relations with the Braxians outside of the GTC. The rest of the humans followed suit, and soon Braxian industries that relied on elements of human trade began to suffer. When the human bloc refused to let up its sanctions, the Braxians turned to state-sanctioned piracy. The first couple Alliance ships hit were small transports. It would have gone unnoticed if they had kept to them, or at least had hired non-Braxian privateers to handle it. But word got back to the Alliance Council, and the contempt turned to rage. Escorts started traveling with state-aligned transport companies. The Alliance Navy moved in tandem with the various trade routes, until this too drew the ire of other nations. Suddenly, warships, small as they were starting to move through other Commission members' space. Given the human capacity for war, this concerned some people. An emergency session was called, and the Commission demanded a resolution. The Braxians doubled down, and the Alliance threatened war if their industry was targeted. The Braxians called the bluff, swore that the Alliance would never be so bold.
Braxia would never bend to such idle threats,
their representative had exclaimed. As these things go, it didn't take long for things to get hot. The Braxian privateer happened upon what they thought was an Alliance merchant vessel alone. They descended on their prey, ready for the ambush, and disabled it with ease. Once aboard, they realized their mistake. As the beacon transmitted across space the distress, and the crew sat on the floor of the cargo hold, the privateers realized their mistake. This wasn't a merchant. It was a medical transport. The powder keg that the Braxians had been building had been lit, and fury flowed forth. Alliance warships arrived in Braxian space, hitting outposts on their borders. The attacks were precise, though. Every outpost hit was never destroyed, but its industry ruined. Mining stations and gas extractors were left intact, but their capacity for industry was ruined. The Braxians prepared for a conflict, rallying the troops and preparing to move to defend the rim. But then, the Alliance Navy arrived at Braxia. The home fleet was swept aside and battle cruisers took position over capital cities. The general of the fleet broadcast a message in front of the landing craft aboard his flagship, a warning that his people were set to land in the cities of Braxia and burn their infrastructure. It would take a day, if not more, for the Braxian main fleet to return from their outer edges of space, by which time the human ships would have bombarded the planet from orbit. The threat was real, and it was here. And so Braxia held its breath. Not literally, very few planets actually breathe, but the population sat in momentary terror. Eyes watched the skies and waited. The outline of Alliance cruisers in low orbit, and the atmosphere crawled with Alliance transports. Loved ones hugged, and bunkers became crowded. And just as soon as they arrived, they packed up and departed. Within a day, the skies were once more clear. the people would learn that the Braxian government had offered reparations and to withdraw their claim to sanctioning Alliance resource trades. In return, the Alliance had agreed not to occupy their home planet, and to also help them establish newer mining technology to compete more actively. All it took was a small show of force. End of story. Story number 2. History Repeats Itself, written by Apophis Pegasus. 2642. The Grasnian pirate ship Skiriuk silently floated through the edge of Imperial space, the burnt remains of a pleasure yacht a few dozen light years behind. From that pleasure yacht, they had obtained a cargo so precious that selling it would likely have them sitting pretty on some pleasure planet for the rest of their lives. And to top it all off, in the interim, the cargo didn't even seem to mind that he was being kidnapped. Hell, he was even cracking jokes. And then she looked at the honeycomb and said,
I'm not sure that's how that works.
Raucous laughter reverberated around the hold as the young human regaled the Grasnians with tall tales. Looking at him, you would never guess that he had just been violently taken hostage. In fact, looking at him, you wouldn't think that he was more than a rich patrician's son, with too much access to daddy's and maybe a good chunk of mommy's money. But there he was, yucking it up with a bunch of 7-foot-tall green-skinned murderers like they were old academy buddies. Initially, this had confused the Grasnians. Prisoners usually just begged for mercy, maybe excreted a few fluids. One tried to build a shrine to them of some sort once. But they, like all good pilots, simply shrugged and decided the entertainment was worth any weirdness, and gotten him a drink. Besides, it wasn't like the human was a threat. He was so small and squishy. No armor plates, no claws, not even a damn venom gland. Honestly, it was a wonder how they gotten their famous Imperium in the first place. "I like you, little human," bellowed the commander drunkenly, clapping a giant hand on the human's back. "Shame will be selling you." The human grinned, patting the large Grasnian's hands. "Not if I don't slaughter you all first, big buddy," laughed the human in reply. That brought another round of laughter. The human had a deliciously morbid sense of humor. He had been making similar quips all day. The human's small stature only added to the hilarity. The human giggled quietly as he shut his eyes, drowning out the cacophony, his neural implants signaling in all directions. There should be at least one outpost near here. Just have to... There! One was! Scrunching his eyebrows, he concentrated. As he did so, the deep voice of his father floated in front of his memory. "Armed outposts along our borders, son. Very well, but they would be your responsibility." He smiled. When he got back, he would have to thank her father for the funding. A couple thousand kilometers away, an automated station activated. A Class 1 distress signal had been sent out, and the station responded according to the protocol. Panels of its side slid open, and thousands of Spather-class penetrators swarmed out of the weapons stalls. Simple but effective these weapons were, consisting of an adamantine-tipped spike on the forend, some guidance systems, and a high-level thruster, propelling it for a fraction of the speed of light, making the arm-sized projectiles punch far above their weight. Milliseconds later, the station coughed out a core-class spacesuit, consisting mainly of nanotech matrix and a ceramic-like substance. It took the form of a compact teardrop shape during the flight, but could unfurl into a skin-tight spacesuit in a matter of seconds. Together, the two sets of technology sped towards the pirate ship, transmitting their ETA to the activator on board. On the ship, the human was beginning to regale the pirates with yet another tale, to the rapt attention of the Grasnians. "All right, guys, here's a killer for you. It's about a gruo of guys who just couldn't take a hint." As if on cue, the first penetrator burrowed into the hull, through the commander's face and out through the other side. For half a second, there was silence from the pilots, with the only sound being the atmosphere bleeding from the two holes in the hull. Then all hell broke loose. The remaining penetrators sliced through the outer hull, control panels, and bodies of the pirates without breaking velocity, turning the ship into a pitted wreck and its unfortunate crew into hole-filled carcasses in seconds. Miraculously, none of the penetrators appeared to touch the now grinning human. Exhaling softly in the now near vacuum of human waited patiently. 5 seconds later, the teardrop-shaped suit floated behind him, attached to his back and expanded into a textured black suit. Floating amongst the wreckage of the ship, penetrators swirled around him like a swarm of agitated hornets. Cage's inhaled, then let it all go in a maniacal guffaw, lasting a good minute. "Well, that was fun," he smirked underneath his helmet. "Shame about the yacht, though." Then he engaged his thrusters and began flying to the outpost station, his entourage of penetrators engaging in a full speed behind him. End of story. I would quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and Patreons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barky, Lord Azrakal, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Dragzoon WRE, Holly's Sister, Arcadian. Thank you very much.